And now, without further ado, let's get right to the interview.
All right. Now we're left with four people. Four people. Barbara Davis, Virginia Davis, Ted Calloway, and Sam Ginyard. Now, we have a bombshell here. Are you ready for it? The affidavits of Calloway, Ginyard, and the Davis sisters, which identified Oswald in the lineups, were taken before they had viewed the lineups. Are you ready for this? This is a bombshell. Look, Volume 24, page 311, Detective Jim Lovell said, quote, I called Mr. Calloway, who came down and brought Sam Ginyard with him. While waiting for the show up, I took an affidavit from both of the above men. End quote. Detective Brown testified, Volume 7, page 250, quote, after their affidavits were taken, we took them to the lineup room, Mrs. Virginia Davis and Mrs. Barbara Davis, end quote. So,
And explain to the audience why that's problematic.
well, let's read what it says in these affidavits, which were taken before they viewed the lineup. Quote, Calloway, the number two man in the lineup I saw at City Hall is the man I saw with the gun in his hand.
So they actually, and so the presumption here is that they didn't add that afterward. They did that before they even went down there. So they knew
Yeah,
the
I mean,
so
I mean,
they were actually told that the number two person in the lineup, okay, that they were about ready to see was the person they wanted to be identified.
maybe, I guess. I mean, it says that their affidavits were taken before they viewed the lineup, and let's see what is in the affidavits. Ginyard, the number two man I saw at City Hall is the same man I saw running away with the pistol in his hand. Barbara Davis, quote, the number two man in the four-man lineup was the same man I saw in my yard. Virginia Davis, quote, the man that was unloading the gun was the same man I saw tonight as the number two man. So, I mean, I guess someone could say, well, maybe they just added them later, added that sentence later, but there, I mean, there's no, I mean, now you're just rationalizing. All I'm doing is saying, hey, this is when these affidavits are taken. They were taken before the lineup, and here's what the affidavits say.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, you are saying that, but the implication is it sounds as if they may have told the individual, where they were going to see the assailant in the sequence of the lineup, and that they ended up incorporating that into the affidavit itself. So,
Yeah, so but even so, even if we were to accept it, these four witnesses would be the only four seemingly credible witnesses that would point to Oswald as being the shooter. So it's not like 12, it's really like four at best. So so Vincent Bugliosi says, "Oh, can 10 witnesses get something wrong?" But when you give all the context as I've been doing, it's not like 10 witness four. So the question should be, could four, are you saying four people couldn't get something wrong?
so,
Yeah.
so obviously, Barbara and Virginia Davis were right there at the corner house where they
Yeah,
saw it. Sam Ginyard and Ted Calloway were down the street, didn't see the actual shooting, but saw him running up south on toward them on Patton, correct?
correct. And just to say really quick, how do I word this? I don't care who said something. I care whether or not what they said was true. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
But I don't care what you believe. I care what you can prove. So, okay. Those are my little thoughts on those four people. Now, any other questions before we get on to the lineups?
Yeah, both, Ted Calloway and Sam Ginyard were in a position because they were really closer to Jefferson to watch this assailant turn the corner and come rapidly toward them, actually, and then, of course, crossing the street so that they didn't run into each other. So it seems to me like they would have had a good long while to look at that witness and to visualize that witness from a lot of different angles as the angle and the perspective changed as this witness was walking up the street. And, there actually was an exchange between Calloway and the assailant. So, it seems to me like and they weren't there watching the shooting. They didn't get the trauma of the shooting. Calloway clearly seemed to be in some level of control. Former Marine, tough guy, didn't seem at all to be, phased by a guy who had a gun in his hand. He wasn't running the other in an opposite direction. So it seems to me like these two should have been, quite capable. I know they didn't get, they weren't as close as Benavides, but they were within 60 feet, presumably. That's what the FBI said. That's what Callaway believed was correct after the FBI measured it. And I know Gignard got that number wrong when they sort of asked him the trick question. But at the end of the day, why wouldn't these two be two of the more reliable? Just given the fact that, that was the circumstances under which they were observing this person who was leaving.
So
So,
like yeah, so like I said, these four, as I said, are the only seemingly credible people who can say that it was Oswald. So these four witnesses, if you take the context away, um, with what I just said about lineup, what I'm about to say more about the lineups in the context of that. If you take the context away, throw that out, then yes, these four witnesses did pick Oswald out of a lineup. They picked him out of a lineup. Did they identify him in a lineup? I mean, picking someone and identifying someone in a lineup are two different things. I don't know what's in their heart. But yeah, all I can say is that these four people did pick Oswald out of a lineup. I'm being honest. Yeah.
and is your concern on on the identification by these four, the fact that that there may have been some evidence that they were all under pressure similarly? I mean, certainly you can extrapolate that. There were certain indiscretions that we've already seen from the things you've already shown us. Do you think that they were equally subject to some level of pressure that maybe isn't committed? I'm trying to get to the core of why you believe that four could go to a lineup. I mean, clearly what they did with regard to the affidavit is highly suspect. So I could see that in and of itself being a problem. But
So
are
like I
there other
said,
things?
again, so like I said, these four witnesses are seemingly good evidence to point towards Oswald. I'm being an honest person
Okay.
but we can get more into that in the lineups as we come. So, any other questions before the lineups?
Nope.
All right. So, do you see this on the screen right here?
I do.
So, for those who are listening, this is Warren Commission document page 1054, which everyone has seen online. It shows, the lineup participants in sport coats and ties and everything. And some people will say, "Oh my gosh, how can you stick Lee in there with guys in suits and sports coats? Oh my God, But actually, I've reconstructed how the lineups were based on the testimony of the lineup participants, based on the testimony of all the lineup participants. Which is, they all testified before the Warren Commission in Volume 7. I don't think a lot of people know about that. And they describe how they were dressed. One guy wore a red um, vest. Another guy wore had a gray knit sweater, and one had a brown sport coat. But he did take the tie off, so props to him for that. So
For those that are listening to this just on the audio portion, you can't see this, but Oswald is in the number two lineup out of four, and he's the only one. He's in a t-shirt, and everybody else has got some other proper overgarments that are
he's bleeding.
quite
He's
different,
bleeding. He's
and
bleeding.
he's bleeding. Yeah, it's quite stark when you put it this way, Matt.
Yeah. So yes. Can you pick out the guy that's just been arrested, Jeff?
Yeah. These were obviously tainted. I mean, even if the problem is that even if they could pick them out, the method of choice now is under great scrutiny, right? Like the question is, would they have been able to pick these people out without this? But in a court of law, there are so many things now that would taint the process of this even being admissible.
Yeah. So in Saturday lineup, which was just outrageous, Lee was thrown in with, you ready for it? Two teeny boppers and a Mexican. So And not only that, he was also shouting out how he was innocent and being railroaded. So, and again, that lineup was canceled. And for those who are watching on the video part, this was not published in the 26 volumes. This is one of the teenagers, one of the two teeny boppers that was in the lineup with him. So,
Yeah,
when-
just terrible, right? Like, I mean, obviously they knew it wasn't a child who committed this. That's unbelievable that they did
yeah,
this.
yeah. And so as for the Friday lineups, one of the guys in the lineups, a guy named Perry, he had brown hair, dark complexion. The other guy named Clark, he had blonde hair, ruddy complexion. And the other guy, Abels, had dark hair and ruddy complexion. So they did not resemble Oswald. And I got this from Gil Jesus right here, researcher Gil Jesus. He said, quote, as if having one blonde in the first two lineups was not enough, the Dallas police put two blondes in the next lineup. Both fillers, Richard Walter Boygart and Ellis Carl Brazel, had blonde hair. So just
So
a little,
so they basically eliminated 2 out of 4. Even if you were a blind squirrel, it was a 50-50 chance of getting it correct, right?
yeah.
After going, I know he didn't have blonde hair.
As
Yeah.
Larry Harris said, these were boisterous lineups. And and the other thing is that the witnesses did not view the lineup separately. The Sam Ginyard and Ted Calloway viewed the same lineup together. They were standing right next to each other. And the two Davis sisters, Barbara and Virginia, they were standing right next to each other and
So
viewed all.
they could hear each other's reactions one way or the other,
Sure.
right? So they
Oh,
were
yeah,
potentially a group of what shouldn't they have all come in one by one?
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's just something I think a lot of people forget about. And Detective Elmer Boyd even admitted under oath that they were dressed better than Oswald. That's volume 7, page 127. So he was honest about that, but that means that Captain Fritz therefore lied to the Warren Commission when he testified that they, quote, fixed themselves where they would look like prisoners, end quote. As someone once said, prisoners don't wear red vests or brown sport coats.
Yeah.
So,
He obviously must have testified in sequence prior to Detective Boyd. You know,
yeah,
I can't imagine he said it after Boyd spilled the beans.
yeah, yeah. So, and like I said, the men in the lineups did not resemble Lee, and also these men gave fictitious names and occupations, and Lee gave his real name and his real occupation, details which by that time were nationally known. So, people are hearing on the radio and on the TV, Oswald worked Texas School Book Depository, and then they go to a lineup, and Oswald steps forward and said, I'm Lee Harvey Oswald. I work at the Texas School Book
Oh
Depository.
my God. I mean, you're actually saying that in the lineup, he told them who he was, actually verbally articulated so that the witnesses could hear it.
Well, let's look at what the evidence says. Detective Sims testified he asked them their names and age and address, and if they owned a car, where they went to school, where they were born, where they were raised. Um, the lineup participant Perry testified that they asked him my name, occupation, what kind of car I drove, address. Clark testified that they asked him my name, occupation, and address. And Abels testified that they asked him where I was from and what my occupation was and where I went to high school. And Daniel Lujan testified that they asked him his name, occupation, phone number, address, etc. So, but some people say, well, there's no direct evidence that Oswald was forced to give his name and his occupation. But as I just laid out right here, they all testified that they were asked their name and their occupations. So if someone wants to go down that route and say, well, there's no direct evidence Oswald was forced to give his name and occupation, then you would have to, then going by that logic, you would have to say, okay, everyone else gave their name and occupation, but Oswald didn't.
Right, exactly. It's conspicuous regardless.
Yeah, it's conspicuous regardless. So you're trapped either way. So it's like, okay, number one, where do you work? What's your name? This and this. Okay, number two. Okay, we're gonna skip that guy. Okay, number three, we're gonna so so there's
Yeah.
no so it's bad no matter what. So if you want to go down this path of well, there's no evidence Oswald gave his name and occupation, then I'm not sure if you want to go down that path. You're going to dig yourself deeper. So, anyway, moving on. Okay, so this is the lead detective, Jim Lavelle, telling all the witnesses in the lineup this. And this was emphasized during the 1986 London mock trial with witness Ted Calloway on the stand. He's being cross-examined. Okay, you ready to listen? This
Yep.
is by Jerry Spence, world famous attorney who never lost a case.
He didn't say to you, quote, the officer didn't say to you, quote, we want to be sure. We want to try to wrap him up real tight on killing this officer. We think he is the same one that shot the president. And if we can wrap him up tight on killing this officer, we have got him. Didn't they say that to you?
That is almost word to word what the chief of detective Will Fritz told me, but he preceded his remark was, but be sure, take your time, get a good look at him. Do not make an identification unless you are absolutely positive.
And then after he gave you that, he said, we want to be sure, we want to try to wrap him up real tight on killing this officer. We think he's the same one that shot the president.
Right.
And if we can wrap him up tight on killing the officer, we have got him. He told you that, didn't he?
Sure
You
did.
think that's a fair and impartial way to make a lineup on somebody? I mean, if you were standing in the lineup, innocent, charged of a crime, and somebody said, we want to wrap him up real tight because if we can show he killed the officer, we got the man who killed the president, do you think you'd have got a fair shake?
Hey.
You reiterate that?
How did he answer? He has a look on his face and said, "I don't think."
Stun
Yeah,
locked. He was stun locked, but then I forgot what he said after that, but he was pretty stun. He was stun locked, as you can tell.
yeah, yeah.
Oh wait,
Well,
wait. Yeah,
so
so
yeah, you might
yeah,
want to
so
read that because for the people in the for the people who are listening to it on the audio, I don't think they don't know what is actually said.
yeah,
Actually, yeah.
so this is what Detective Jim Lavelle told all the witnesses before viewing the lineup or at the lineup. Quote, we want to be sure. We want to try to wrap him up real tight on killing this officer. We think he's the same one that shot the president. But if we can wrap him up tight on killing this officer, we have got him. That's pretty stunning to say. And notice that he said the police said him and not the men and not the men. We want to try to wrap him up real tight. We think he is the same one that shot the president. But if we can wrap him up tight on killing this officer, we have got him. Take a good look at him. So they're not saying to take a look at each man, and they're saying get a good look. We want to nail this guy right here. You know what I mean? Him.
Yeah,
Him.
one thing I did hear in the clip is that Calloway said that Fritz said it, and now you're saying Detective Laval said it. Did they both pretty much say the same
He
thing?
was
Or different?
misremembering. It was really
It was Laval and
it
not
was
Fritz.
well, and as a matter of fact, Ted Calloway actually committed perjury at that trial, at that mock trial, because earlier Vincent Bugliosi, who was prosecuting Oswald, said, "quote We're all four men in the lineup of the approximate same age, height, and weight." And Calloway said, "Sure were, they were, but this is straight up perjury because Oswald was 24. The other men in the lineup were 30, 34, 31, and 26. Oswald was 5'9". The men were all 5'11", and of course Oswald was slender. And Cecil McGuire said, quote, the rest of them were larger men. So yeah, there's a lot to this whole lineup that really meets the eye. Usually people just say, oh, they were rigged and that's it. But it goes a lot deeper.
It sure does. Yeah. I mean, I've learned a lot today just in listening to you and all these different details. I've seen some of it on your prior videos, but boy, there's a lot here.
Buried deep in the endnotes, CD-ROM to his massive 2007 book, Reclaiming History, Vincent Bugliosi wrote that Detective Lavelle told him that of the lineup participants, quote, I made sure that none were wearing a suit coat. Now, this has to be a fib because, as I said, lineup participant Perry testified that he was wearing a brown sport coat.
Yeah. So they got that wrong. Yeah, he got that wrong for
And
sure.
Bugliosi goes on to say that Lavelle additionally told him, quote, I definitely remember not asking any of them their names. Wait a minute. Wait, fact check. Let's go back to where it was. There it is right there. That's absolutely a fib because, as I said, the lineup participants and even Detective Sims testified that their names were given at the lineup. So there's a lot of fibbing going on in later years to try to,
That particular mock trial went on in what year for the audience's benefit?
1986. 1986.
1986. So we're talking some 23 years past the
Yeah.
original date or so. So there's a lot of questions on whether or not people's memories were even strong enough in some cases to recall all those details. Yep.
Yeah. So despite all this, the Warren Commission wrote on page 169 of their report, quote, the commission is satisfied that the lineups were conducted fairly. I mean, even Vincent Bugliosi, the big man himself, says, quote, the Tippit lineups were not fair lineups. And and fun fact, all of his deep analysis on the Tippit case is buried in his CD-ROM. It's not in the main text of his book, so I had to dig through it and find out what he said on all.
Well, he doesn't often capitulate on anything that would be controversial and not supporting and Oswald
Yeah,
did it. So for him to say this is a pretty strong statement by
he buried he buried it. It's not in the main text of his book. It's on a CD-ROM, but it's there.
but I think that's extra evidence, right? I mean, the
Yeah,
fact that number one, he had to include it or it would have been highly suspect, but he includes it and places it on the ROM. So at the end of the day, I think those are two bookend elements that are very supportive of his position on this, which it wasn't fair. At the end of the day, and you're pointing out all the details, but at the end of the day, they weren't fair. They were not fair lineups.
he said he wrote this book for the ages. I guess he buried it in the CD-ROM. Maybe some eager beaver like 200 years from now might be like, huh, that's interesting that he wrote that, but I don't think he realized that it would be sooner than he thought. So,
Well, if they stop producing CD-ROM players, you won't be able to look at you. You still have to have a
oh,
laptop old
oh, that's
enough.
oh, that's interesting. Yeah, CD-ROMs are dead. No one can.
You better be
Good
copying
point.
all those onto another site and
That's
retaining
interesting.
them, or it's going
Oh,
to
that's a
be
good point, Jeff. That's a good point. Yeah, bury them on an old.
technology. Yeah,
No, that's interesting.
expiring technology. Yeah.
That's interesting. So yeah.
Thank you again for listening today to another episode of JFK, The Enduring Secret interview series. Please join us on a regular basis, and you'll find our podcast at your favorite podcast outlet, as well as our YouTube channel on YouTube. And that's JFK, The Enduring Secret.